I tell people that more and more people have less and less people. And it seems that we're getting, as a society, more isolated, lonely, disconnected. And one of the opportunities, therefore, of the church is to do what the church is called to do, mourn with those who mourn, and be there when there's a loss in the community.
Welcome back to the podcast. We are so excited that you have joined us today. Chris, I would love to hear a little bit about your fire department story from yesterday.
Yeah, so this is a good. We like try to share like a rural story kind of thing that happens in our lives. Yesterday was a good example of this. So I had just picked up our youngest daughter. They get off the bus just down the hill from us, basically. But I went down to pick her up, and as I'm getting home, my such is the nature of volunteer firefighting now that I get. Actually didn't even have my pager on me, but my cell phone, like 8 different ways it starts giving me alerts that we have a call. So I get texts, I get emails, I have an app that starts making noise. Anyway, so there's a call, and so the call comes in, and there is a horse stuck on its side, stuck in a ravine. What does that mean? Good question. It's on a road where I know there are horses. So I bring our daughter back to our house. We were basically at the house when I heard the call go off. I bring her inside. I tell Kathleen, hey, I'm going to leave. And Kathleen's amazing about this, because oftentimes what happens in these situations is, like yesterday, our daughter had a softball game. Our son had a baseball practice. Our other son, we only have one son. Our son had a baseball. Our other daughter had a softball game in different places. I was going to go down to part of the softball game, and Kathleen was going to pick up our son. I'm like, good luck figuring out the logistics, because I may not be back. And I headed out of the house to go down to the fire station. By the time I had basically gotten to the fire station, one of our members who lives like right around the corner had gotten there, and he said, yes, indeed, there is a horse on its side that's stuck in a small stream in a little bit of a ravine. Bring lots of rope. Which is, believe it or not, now I am on a rural fire department, but this is the first time I've had to do like a large animal rescue of any sort. That is not that uncommon for fire departments in our area, and rescue squads, things like that. But I just haven't ever gone on one of these calls before, even though I've been in the department for close to 15 years now. But anyway, so I was like, oh, okay, well, firefighting is sometimes a little like ministry, in that sometimes you're going to say, well, I haven't done this before, but I have some skills that may apply. We're going to do the best we can. So we got to the place, or we got to the farm where the horse was. There's basically a little stream in a field. It was an older horse, 30-year-old horse that had gotten stuck. Basically, somehow she had maybe slipped down the bank or walked into the stream and tripped. On her side, didn't look to be in too much physical distress. Thankfully, that was a good thing. But definitely stuck. As happens in a rural place like this, lots of people respond to a call when it's kind of an interesting call, and a horse stuck in a ravine is interesting, and people obviously have compassion for animals in our area. So anyway, we start trying to figure out what we can do. We try a couple things. Eventually, first we tried to move as many rocks around her, so when she thrashed a little bit, that it was on not any big rocks that were going to do any real, hopefully, lasting damage. A vet had already been called. We started calling. There was a couple departments near us that have some equipment specifically for horse rescue, for equine rescue. So we called both of them, get them started in case it takes us longer than we're hoping. And then we get a little creative. I didn't actually do too much. I moved a couple of rocks, got my feet wet in the stream, and then kind of made sure that everybody was being safe as they decided to. We were able to get a strap underneath the horse. Every 4 or 5 minutes, she would kind of lay there and just calm down. And then every 4 or 5 minutes, she'd really try to get herself up. And she just couldn't kind of get enough of momentum to get herself standing up on her legs again. And so we eventually were able to kind of found a little hole, a little cavity under her body where we could like sneak through. First we used like a little stick, and then we tied like webbing to a stick, which is like just like 1.5 inch wide strapping. And then then a big piece of webbing like that you would use with like a machine or like a tow type of situation. And we were able to kind of drag all that underneath her so that we could get like a big piece of webbing underneath her, basically, and a big strap underneath her. And the next time she tried to get up, we had a few people pulling on the end of the strap and just were able to give her just enough leverage that we got her up. And not all firefighting stories end with a happy day, but horse stood up on her own. Then we could walk her out of the ravine. It wasn't that steep, so with a little leading help, we could get her out. And she, at least at the time, looked pretty good when she walked away. The vet was on his way to take a look at her, but she wasn't limping or anything, wasn't lame, and she had a few little nicks on her, but basically looked in pretty good shape. She pooped right away afterwards. It was stories you wanted to tune into the fire department to the podcast for. But these are good things, right? Anyway, a little too much information there. Sorry, but it was good. It was a good reminder of like the way that life just happens in a small town, right? Like, it wasn't actually just people on the fire department and rescue squad who showed up. There were several other people who had horses in town who somehow word travels very fast about this kind of thing, who came, who work with animals. So we had like several people that were all of a sudden just there helping out. And in this case, doesn't always end in a good story. In this case, pretty happy ending. As far as I know, there was a picture of the horse this morning on Facebook. I saw that it looked like with the thank you for everybody that helped out. So horse looked like they were in good shape. And so, so a good day, a good rural day, a good chance to, it was good.
Well, and one of the things, so I get emails whenever Chris goes out on a call, and so I at least know general details. So I saw horse and stream or something like that, and I was like, oh boy. And I was in the middle of a Zoom meeting with another pastor of a church in a small city, and I was like, so it looks like my husband's going to go out on a fire call to help a horse out. I'm like, I'm guessing you don't do this often. And he looked at me and he was just like, nope, can't say that happens to me. So I think when you're a pastor, unexpected things happen, but it's just a little bit different when you're in a rural area.
Yeah, it was funny for me. As a kid, for some reason, I always had like these pictures of cats like getting up in trees and fire departments helping cats down. We also have never done that. We don't have a ladder truck, so that we wouldn't be over. I mean, we have ladders, but not like really a good setup for that. I don't know. Maybe that happens in suburban areas more than it happens in rural areas. I don't know what happens with our cats when they get stuck up trees. Maybe they come down. Maybe most people don't let their cats out. I don't know. But anyway, but I've never had a cat. Well, I've actually growing up, I had.
You did.
Yes. Growing up, I had two different cats get stuck in trees. The fire department did not get either one out. That's a different story. Hilarious. That's a different funny story that maybe I'll share sometime. But
the cats were okay.
Yes. It's actually more of a miracle that I'm still alive and my father's still alive, but that's a whole other story. But yes, this time we were able to rescue the horse, which was good. Again, not every time does it have a happy ending, but in this case, it really did. So, a fun story to get you started. Hopefully, this is part of part of the joy of living in a small town, a rural place, is getting to experience stuff like that. It didn't start off as a fun thing, but by the end of it, it was a good experience. So, so we're excited today for the interview. We have a really good interview. Not that we have bad interviews, hopefully, but we have a really good interview. This is not from the BGAV. This is a pastor we actually got to meet in person about a month ago, but at an event for Ascent. But his name is Corey Laughary, and he is a pastor in Palouse, Washington, which is in eastern Washington, small town there. And his church does a lot of really neat stuff with helping train and also support mental health resources in their community. And so he shares that story with us. We thought, I don't know, we didn't plan it this way really, but it did work out that we're releasing this in May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. So that was on the plan, but it did, the Holy Spirit works these things out sometimes for us. Mm-hmm. And Kathleen, anything you want to share about the interview, about what you thought about the interview?
It was really great to hear how they're impacting their community and how loving your neighbors can look different in different places. And in his particular community, loving their neighbor really means helping with mental health in real tangible ways, not just a call, but really doing a lot of trainings and supporting when there's tragedies. So I really appreciated his the conversation that we had with him, and I'm excited for everybody else to hear this conversation too, because I think it's really important.
Yeah, I would just say I think it'll be encouraging to you because it is a church in a rural area, not a huge church or anything like that. That has just kind of kept taking the next step on ways that they could be impactful in this case in mental health. And it should be encouraging to you and to all of us, I think, that are in rural places or in smaller churches that that we can find places where we can we don't have to start with like a program that's gonna somehow change everything about the way this problem is addressed in our community. But we can start just doing the simple things and little things that we maybe have access to, and how that can grow over time into something that really is very impressive and has real impact inside the church and outside the church and the community. And I think this is a good encouragement story that to help you think about how your church could do some of these kinds of things. Maybe not with mental health, maybe with mental health, I don't know. But in a place where you have a little bit of Corey had a little bit of expertise in mental health, or at least a little bit of experience in it, and also was able to kind of over time build that into something that really is quite does some really neat things in their community. So. Well, we're here today with Corey Laughary, and we are excited to have him here. We're going to talk some about mental health and how his church and he personally have gotten involved in really being a big part of how mental health is addressed in their community, and just kind of learn some things about how, obviously this is what they do at Corey's church is not necessarily going to be what we do at all of our churches, but we're really excited to hear how it's worked out there. And hopefully it'll get just the ideas flowing in your head for ways that your church might be able to find spaces in the community where you can really make an impact and be part of your wider community. So yeah, we're really excited to have you with us, Corey. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you both, and thank you for having me on your podcast and for doing this podcast. It's awesome.
Absolutely. So Corey, can you share a little bit about your own story, where you grew up, how you first became aware of mental health needs in rural communities?
Yeah. So I grew up in the Northwest in Spokane, Washington, and had a blessed life. I didn't know much about mental health challenges and I have resources. I ended up getting a college job that led me to be on a mental health hotline in Spokane. And that exposed me to lots of folks that were having challenges, and we were trained how to learn to intervene, at least on the phone, and connect them to further resources. So that opened up my eyes to a whole world of people that were hurting in a way that I had not struggled with as a fairly young adult. And that led me to say, well, maybe I want to go into this. This is before I went to seminary. So I found a position in a group home for troubled children and kids that had different challenges and behavioral and mental health challenges, and worked there for a bit and really had my eyes open to some darkness and brokenness that is in our society, particularly with youth, that I hadn't seen. Broke my heart for those kids. And so that my eyes were open to that. But then I did feel a call to go to seminary and explore what God was calling me to. So had those experiences in my background. And when we were called to a small town ministry in Palouse, Washington, which is just a town of 1,000 people, we pastor a church called Palouse Federated Church, and sometimes we just call it Palouse Church. But it's a great small town, but like anywhere, there are people who have struggles and or anxiety or bipolar disorder, different things that can come up in lives. My eyes had been open before. We're starting to see things, and the difference that I learned about small towns, because I hadn't grown up in one we live in, is the resources are often farther away, and ready available resources are just are not there, at least in our context, and they're hard to find. And so began wondering what we could do about that over time with our church in our town. How could we help? We can't solve everything, but what can we do to be part of a solution for our neighbors and our church members? Yeah, so that's a bit of the seeds of it.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something we can relate to where we are too. There are resources. It's not like there are no resources, obviously, for mental health or any kind of any whatever the
What has happened,
complications are in a community. But they're definitely limited, and they may be further away. That's a good way to put it. We always kind of say, and we may even have talked about this with you before, but we live in a place where we only have state police coverage for the most part, and you know you can call the police and you might be 45 minutes before they. I mean, they will get here faster if it's a real emergency. They will dispatch other. There are a few other local sheriffs and things who may come, but. And so certainly mental health, you know, someone to come in and intervene in a mental health situation, it can, it takes a while and there's just not as many access to resources as there would be in a lot of other places in these rural areas.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And, you know, lots of things have changed over the years I've been in Palouse. There's, you know, laws that now require first responders to have mental health training. And when I got here, there wasn't that kind of law or requirement. And we've been blessed to be able to provide some of that training. And that's where our story ended up going is I had received some training when I was on hotline in Spokane. And I thought, well, I could go back and get that certification and bring suicide prevention and intervention training to our congregation and to the community. Some of that was came up because of deaths by suicide in our local area. And I thought, you know, we need to be part of helping prevent this. So, and then we did get invitations to come in and train first responders, EMS, law enforcement in our county. And that, you know, so that was it wasn't like a planned out. We didn't have a strategic plan for how is our little church going to improve mental health resources in the county. But we said, what is God calling us to do, and how can we love our neighbors in this aspect of real life, of mental health challenges, and so. First thing was getting some training, looking for training that's out there. The good news is we live in an age where there's more training getting available. Some of it's free or very affordable online. And so having rural congregations now can get that training without having to pay a trainer to come in or pay to fly somewhere and have a week-long training or something, which I had to do some of that years ago to get some of my certifications. Now it's easier to get fairly high-quality training and certifications where you're at and then start delivering some basic training to folks. So, you know, we're not pretending to be counselors. I'm not saying we're getting counselor level training. Our church is focused on doing like lay level training, intervention level training. So you might think of it in the physical realm as a lay person could become a first aid instructor, CPR instructor. We are having our folks become suicide prevention instructors, and not professional counselors unless they are already one or something like that. But learning QPR is one of the methods. It's a internationally recognized method: question, persuade, and refer. Having a couple of our people get certified to be instructors, including myself, and then then offering that training to people. So training is, I guess, one of our three categories is how I think of it. We training, partnership, and response is where we work. So we are training at a grassroots level for our neighbors, and so community groups, organizations, on what is mental health and what can we do about it as neighbors and friends, and what are resources through a little grant available that we can refer people to. What is 988 and the conversation? How could you use it? So some basic training on self-care is one that we provide. And so training is something I think a lot of churches could consider. How can we get into training in a responsible way where it's professional? We get a professional certification and people stepping up, pretending to be something we aren't, but what is something we could provide and increase awareness in our community and and love our neighbors better. So that's what do something about it.
No, I love that because it's not just loving. Loving our neighbors is very important, and that's something that we should be striving for. But also increasing our connections in the community is helpful. And I would imagine building credibility within your community. That grows when you're doing things like trainings for your community. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I think when your neighbors know that you care about them, no matter what they're going through, and that that you are essentially saying it without having to broadcast it, that you shouldn't feel shame if you're going through a mental health struggle or if you've had suicidal thoughts. Yeah, there are people in your community who care and want to talk to you and listen to you, and so once we opened that door and shared some of that on social media, and then share that we have some of these events, it builds relationships with people that you might not otherwise know, or they might stay away from the church because they think that they can't talk about that there, or there's a stigma that they're broken in some way, that maybe that they're not loved by God is what some people thought, or the church won't understand this. And so we were learning that as we went. We knew it was the right thing to do, and then we were learning, this has the side effect of building connections with people who we might not otherwise know, or opening doors for dialogue with people who don't believe in Jesus yet. So it's been an interesting journey that way. Our main approach is not to use it as evangelism. We're not doing a bait and switch. We are genuinely serving them, but it does build bridges of trust and goodwill, and opens all kinds of doors. So that's very true. That's doors we didn't expect. To our local state university inviting us in to do suicide prevention training for all their athletic department staff, which is about 150 people, public agencies, businesses. I got to teach a self-care class to 40 accountants at their annual staff meeting. They asked us in to do that. And I guess accounting can be a really stressful position, and they were having some struggles with turnover and people not taking care of themselves. And so we talked about that and brought a lot from our faith tradition into that, of having disciplines and routine in a healthy way. And so, getting into this whole area has really grown and blossomed our avenues to reach different groups of people that we might otherwise not know.
Yeah, I very much appreciate just hearing some of these stories about work. Or I love that you said this is, it's not bait and switch. This is not, it's the primary purpose isn't even evangelism. It's just getting to know and be a love and be a force for good in our community, and we underestimate what that does for the kingdom of God. I think you see Jesus do that a lot in his ministry, where the primary focus is, even when asked, when he declares that he's, he reads from the scroll of Isaiah, and how do we know that the kingdom of God is amongst us? It's not that people. I mean, obviously, it's that people are turning their lives to Jesus, but it's really not that. It's that the poor are being looked after, that the sick are being cured, and that people are being cared for. And in the midst of that, of course, when people see that, it gives opportunity for them to see that this comes from a sense of knowing a God who cares about the people who are doing the helping and about the people who are in need of the help, and that we're all people who are sometimes in need of help, and also all people who can be, through the grace of God, capable of being part of the help there. So I think it becomes a really powerful, much more, in many ways, much more than any kind of evangelism strategy you could come up with. It becomes a much more powerful statement of the gospel to people.
Amen.
So you have a mental health ministry team at your church. Can you kind of explain how that works in your church.
Yeah, so we're pretty straightforward and simple. We don't have a lot of levels of government in our church. So if we have an idea of a couple members that want to do something good, we encourage people to get together, a team. And in this case, it was, I was leading the way of wanting to do this, having the conviction, but at a certain point realized, shouldn't do that alone. That's not how a church works. So said, who wants to join in on this? Basically announced it and talked about it a bit, and had several people step up and say, I'd like to get more training in the area of mental health, and I'd like to be part of the team to go out to events. And then having like our youth leader, Wang is our youth leader, and he has stepped up to become a QPR certified instructor too. So we basically several years ago put it out there, who'd like to be involved in going to events where we offer mental health training. And some of the work is packing together packets for the training, whatever it may be, the folders that we give out, or so some of it's administrative type work. Some of it is at the event itself, being in the background for people who might leave the room because they're having trouble, and then one of our trained people on the team goes and checks on that person in the hallway and just makes sure they're okay. Often when we have events that are large, if we have 30 people in the room, several people at the end are going to want to talk about what they heard and learned, and maybe something they've been through. And so you don't want to go to those events solo and then have a line of people or somebody not get listened to. So we like to go in groups of 3 or 4 or 5. And then at the end, we have team members available to talk to people, even be open to pray with people if that's where God leads it. Even in a public event, that could happen if the person is wanting that and open to that. So we use our team members in different ways. And what has happened in our situation, we started offering training first, and then building the team to go and do training events, and finding ourselves getting more invitations in different places and groups. But then an interesting thing rose up in our county because of our partnerships, which partnerships another part of what we do is we decided it shouldn't just be our church doing things, right? Who else is doing good stuff? And there's plenty of people doing good stuff in our rural county. And so between a relationship with me and a director of the main counseling agency in our biggest city in our county, which is Pullman, Washington, our county only has about 60,000 people total. But the counseling director of that clinic, and then our county coroner, who sees the impact of suicide deaths, we formed a leadership group, and we had another counselor too at the beginning. And we had a long name. We called it Whitman County Suicide Prevention, Intervention, and Resiliency Task Force. Along the way, our county public health, who noticed what we were doing, said, you guys need some help with names and marketing and things that we weren't working on, because what we were working on was just being a grassroots agency from our different angles of getting churches together, school principals, Main Street librarians, city clerks, a grandma from a town. Some of our towns are fairly isolated in our county, and just having several meetings those first couple of years where we partnered together and say, what do you experience, or what challenges do you have in your rural community, and how could we lift up resources for each other? And we simply, in a partnership, and I as a pastor and chaplain in our county was part of that lifting up of the conversation. So this group raised up out of the grassroots, and it eventually, with the help of the PR support of our public health, was called Resilient. And so that opened up doors for invitations and training. But eventually, out of that, the leadership recognized that it's one thing to get people trained and to reduce stigma in our county and to increase the conversations and awareness, which we were doing. But things are still happening, and suicide loss is still happening, and other difficulties. So we need some kind of response, actual physical response besides just proactive training. But what do we do after something? And we looked around and learned a fair bit about what was going on in other places and what we could pull off. And we we have developed over these last couple of years something called a co-response team in Whitman County. And that is a group of people who get different trainings. Again, they're not becoming a professional counselor, but several trainings, including some kind of chaplain level trainings for crisis incident stress management, what some people out there may know, SISM trainings, and but suicide intervention trainings, mental health first aid, youth mental health first aid, motivational interviewing, other things, scene awareness, confidentiality training. So we took this team of about 15 people through those trainings, and now we are available to respond after a crisis. So we're just getting rolling. It's taken a while to form it, to get the people trained, but now we have agencies that know they can call us if they, like an EMS crew leaves the scene and they know that this family's in crisis and they're fairly unsupported or they don't have anybody to follow up with them. They can call our number and we can get somebody to follow up with that person, and for 2 weeks provide them post-trauma or post-emotional distress care, suicide follow-up care, and connect them to further ongoing resources. We can get them physical resources, other things like that. So connecting that back to the church, basically our whole mental health ministry team, when that additional opportunity came to step up with this resilient co-response for Whitman County, our folks said, yes, I want that additional training and be on those teams and actually respond to calls too. So that's an area that we have now branched out into. And that is not our church ministry. So we have our church ministry group, and then we have people involved in our church ministry group who said, I've chosen to partner with this broader thing and actually go into a home in another town of somebody who just lost their family member to suicide and sit with them and listen and see how I can help provide resources and try to help mitigate the traumatic stress they're going through. So response is a new thing. And I not every church is going to say, okay, let's do all those at once. Let's develop partnerships and let's get a bunch of us trained in response. It happened organically and over a multi-year time period. So
yeah, I like that description at the end there. You saw you just sort of, the Holy Spirit just seemed to kind of give you the next step each time, right? At first it was just, I felt like, for just you, Corey, that you had the experience with it, and it was like, well, you should, and then, well, this is church. We don't do things alone in church. So we you bring some people along, and then, and you just kind of see where and how long the Holy Spirit keeps moving you in different directions and being open to those places. And it's definitely, I think borne some pretty amazing fruit for a rural church, and good stuff.
What I would say to that, just following up, is instead of, this can be a scary topic for people, right? And instead of doing nothing, saying, well, what can we do? What can we do responsibly that is actually helpful? Not trying to pretend to be something we're not, but what can we do? And then do the next right thing that you can do. That's really simple, right? So we can get QPR certification training, and it's an hour to hour and a half long class, and you can learn to do that well. And that's an entry level one. There are other suicide intervention trainings that are great. Some are about the same length, and some are 1 or 2 day training, but you can go decide for yourself. There's Christian organizations that provide Christian mental health training. There's spiritual mental health first aid. There's a version of that out there now that the churches can find and maybe say, we're going to scholarship 1 or 2 people in our congregation to go get this. And then maybe we just do 2 or 3 events a year. But what can you do? What makes sense for your congregation? Is there a partnership you can build in your community or county? Where can you start? And a lot of us smaller churches, I know we talked about this in our prep. We don't have like counseling centers, or some of the big city churches, they might have a counseling center or a counselor on staff, and that's wonderful. Maybe you get to partner with a church like that that's not too far away, or that can zoom in some counseling or something and utilize resources that are in the kingdom. But instead of bemoaning that we don't have resources, or we don't have something, well, what can we do? Who can we connect with? And is a very resourceful God, is what we've learned again through this ministry, and we've been able to connect to all different kinds of resources. So we even get paid for doing some of our trainings. It's crazy. I mean, we did not set out to do this, but a lot of the agencies have budget for it, and so they're just wanting to pay. And then what we do is pile that money back in a mental health ministry fund, and then offer it to groups and other agencies to cover costs, travel costs, books, and things that are involved for groups that don't have the funding. And so essentially subsidizing or creating our own little mini grant system in a way where we can make sure that folks who really have a genuine need get the training they need.
So I had just a question. So obviously there was a bunch of people who got very much involved in this in your church community. How about, I'll just speak for knowing what sometimes the dynamics in churches, for the people who haven't gotten involved in it, like how have hopefully that's been smooth. But I know sometimes that can be tricky if part of our congregation gets really excited about something. How's that? Or maybe it's been wonderful. But how have you seen it impact? Maybe because obviously, anything you do at church, some people are going to get very excited about that specific thing, and there's stuff that people don't fit into as well. And how's that worked out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's kind of different levels of involvement and support. So Wang Ming, our youth leader, decided to take the step and become a trainer. Then there's the team that has the additional trainings and often goes to the events. And then there's people who say, this is great and I love it, and I want to come to some of those trainings and learn. And so we have a number of people, probably I haven't done a recent count, but I would say more than half of our congregation has done suicide prevention training for sure. And then maybe close to that number has done the full day mental health first aid training. So we have a lot of people who say, it's not my calling to be on the team, but I think this is important. I'm hearing good things about it. So I want to get that training. So we have a lot of people who've gone through the training themselves just to have more education, more awareness. And then you do have people that don't do either of those things, aren't on the team, and don't get trained, but are thankful that it's there and pray for it, or may even send sometimes people to training or pass the word that, hey, our church has some certified trainers, and then the open door to an event comes through that person who maybe has never even attended one of our trainings, but they know and they think it's a good thing that our church does this. And I know that in some church ministries, you do something new and it's maybe a little edgy. I don't know if mental health really should be seen as edgy, but so some people might not think, right? Some people might not think that it's core ministry or something, but we haven't really had that. It's not the only thing we talk about. I think if it became the only thing we talked about, or the only way to have a close relationship with Jesus, if you talk about mental health or something, then I think we would have opposition in that case. But largely, it's been supported. Once we stepped out and said we were going to do this, and the leadership supported it and thought this is right. Our community has these needs. We've seen some tragedies happen. The support for some of the costs of the trainings just was provided for. That's one of the beautiful things of it, is people who saw the need. And these are folks in the congregation and out of the congregation. And so we didn't have to do a fundraising campaign. For me to go to another city, I had to go to Seattle to do the week-long mental health first aid training to become a certified instructor. And that's thousands of dollars. And the cost was just covered. Youth mental health first aid was another week-long training. And again, in person. So additional cost, thousands of dollars just covered. And that was awesome. We're not a rich church by any means, but I guess when it's God's will, God's bill, that kind of thing, we have seen that with this. And I think there will be people who, I don't know who gives in our case, but I think there are people who just say, I believed in this and I've been waiting for a church to do this, and so I'll gladly support it. So we've seen really a story of support. both with people and finances.
That's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think most churches will if you do it well.
Yeah.
I guess there's grumpy people out there, right?
Yeah, of course.
I don't want people to deal with their depression, or I don't want the church to love people. Just give me whatever I want. But I think most Christians are in this to glorify God, right, and to love people, and yeah. It's a hard argument against this.
No.
It's not. It doesn't have to be every church's big thing.
No.
And it's definitely not a majority of our church that's on the team or anything. But why not do something, or partner with a couple local churches and do something together? Yeah. So, and I should say, with partnership we live in a two-town kind of reality that we share a school district, and there's 4 churches that we work and do youth ministry together and share some outreaches. Like we're doing an outreach to high school seniors that it's already started, goes on for the next few weeks, and none of the other pastors in that have gone and received the mental health certification, but they know about our events. They know what we do. I've done training in a couple of those churches and in the other town, so building partnerships within if you're in a small town, but you have another small town nearby, or in the ministerium, and saying, hey, maybe one of us gets the training and we share this. It could be a multi-church effort too. So.
Yeah, I think that's just one thing I have seen, I think can be true for rural churches. Partnerships between churches in some places, it can be hard to do, but I feel like we have unique opportunities in rural places to do that. I feel like it's some of the barriers that may happen with that in other circumstances. Most of those barriers are completely human origin, right? Like they're not kingdom of God focused, but they're a reality. But I think some of them are just not as prevalent sometimes. Not that they couldn't be there, but are not that prevalent often in rural places. Mm. And I find it does open up opportunities. That's cool to hear that you bring your youth together and things like that to do stuff together. I think there's real benefit in being able to partner with other churches to do that kind of stuff and to find niche is the wrong word, but maybe it's the right word. I don't know. For the place that God is like really kind of growing something up in a church, and be like, it does not need to be duplicated right down the road. We can especially if they've got something neat going on that you can just kind of promote, and it can be a really beneficial relationship for you, and then mostly for the wider community and the kingdom of God. I mean, that's what we're really all about. So,
amen.
So
Amen. Yeah.
So I have a question for you, Corey, about what advice would you give other rural pastors or leaders who feel the need to address, there's a need in their community to address mental health, but don't know where to start? Where would you point them to?
That's a great question. If you have a counselor in your congregation, you can, of course, talk to them. If you do, if you don't, so talking to and meeting with the director of that counseling agency in our county that was in a different city, but it serves a wider area, and getting a sense of the needs, but beyond anecdotally from what I've experienced in my small community. So probably if you're a small town pastor or church leader in a small town, you have some stories about what has happened, what was hard for a family that had somebody with an emerging mental illness, and what was that story like, and looking at the gaps in that story, maybe with a professional or with that family, and saying what could have been better. And what we came back to is a lot of what could have been better for folks is noticing things earlier could help a lot of people. And that's one of the premises behind mental health first aid, is that a lot of people suffer in the early stages of emerging mental health issues, and their family members, friends, or coworkers or church members don't know some of the signs and symptoms to help them or just love them as they go through it, and partner with them to get services that they might need that will help them have quality of life down the road. And American statistics on onset of symptoms to people actually getting help that they need are not good, especially with like bipolar disorder and things where the onset of symptoms to treatment can sometimes be 10 years. And all the research says the earlier that symptoms are noticed and they're empowered to get some help in treatment or medication if needed, then they have a higher quality of life and better outcomes. So back to your question then. So talking with people who have had the challenges in their family or in the community, could be the school counselor. A lot of districts have school counselors or the principal, and saying, what could we do that would be helpful? Having conversations first. I know one thing we did first after a loss by suicide several years ago. We didn't know quite what to do. I hadn't gone back and got my certification for QPR instructing yet. So I just had a listening group after that. And we called it FACT. It was FAQDDD. It was just, do you want to talk about fear, anxiety, questions about despair, depression? I think those were the FAQDD. And so we just had a group where we come listen and talk for a few nights. Where, what are you struggling with? Did a recent loss impact you and affect you? And listening to each other. So starting a listening group, not pretending to solve all the problems, but out of that came a very clear thing. A lot of people don't know where to start to have a conversation if their coworker, friend, church member, neighbor was suicidal. So I said, light bulb came on, said, I've already had that training years ago. I can go back and get that. And so, but we started with just a listening group after a loss, after a tragedy, and saying, what are folks going through? And people did show up to that when we did that. We just put some posters around town, emails, and people from inside and definitely outside the church came to that, non-threatening, just a listening meeting. So that's one place to maybe start if there's been a loss or tragedy.
Yeah, I think it's for I was just thinking as brings to mind, this wasn't a suicide death, but we had a relatively young teacher in our community a year and a half ago die very unexpectedly, and a couple things I think that were helpful for us as pastors, but also us as a church being able to be somewhat helpful in that circumstance. One is we already had a lot of established relationships, right? Like the people in your community hopefully know who you are, and that's and just know that you're part of kind of the wider, you want good for your community in that. And then it was a space to oftentimes, even as without specific training, it's a reality that people in churches, I mean, pastors particularly, but people in churches too, often deal with like death on a much more regular basis than people outside of the, right? Like, especially leadership in church, you're helping with funerals and things, you're around that, just thinking about it. And, it gives you that alone will give you a space to be somebody at least who's willing to listen to it and talk to someone, and listen to stories through it. Make sure you kind of ask some of the questions that might be helpful, and also to make sure like you see, is this person the details. Is this person are they going home and that they're they live alone? So like can you have somebody else that who knows them? Give them a call and just check in, make sure, hey, how's it going? It doesn't have to be anything exciting, just that kind of little stuff like that, and that's just without any training. So I mean, obviously, if you want to take those kinds of things to the next step, but when there are inevitably in your community on a relatively regular basis, there's going to be tragedies of one sort or another. Certainly, mental health tragedies happen all the time, but lots of other ones, and that the church is very much positioned and called to be a source of strength in those moments for the community, and that we should train ourselves the way that we can, and also lean into those circumstances. I think it's really powerful when the church does that.
That's a good word. I tell people that more and more people have less and less people, and that it seems that we're getting, as a society more isolated, lonely, disconnected. And one of the opportunities, therefore, of the church is to do exactly what you're saying: is do what the church is called to do, mourn with those who mourn, and be there when there's a loss in the community. I would encourage small town rural churches you should be the place that's willing to have funerals for free. That's policy we have. I think I think that's a good thing for small town churches to do. Offer those services. We don't have a formal grief ministry anymore. We had a grief support group at one time. I think that's a great thing to do. That's low hanging fruit, so to speak, of something that generally is always needed. But having people who've gone through it too be mentors and available. So we have a really strong widows group that is fairly informal, but each together they know when there's a loss in the community, and they reach out, and they're there, and they don't force anything on anybody, but they've been through it, and they do life together, and then they invite others to be with them, so they're not lonely and disconnected in their grief. Jesus came for the sick, not the healthy. So if somebody's just fine without Jesus and can go through their grief and whatever, and they don't need us, okay. But the church should be wide open to the reality that there are a lot of hurting people out there there are unsupported people, grieving folks, and so how can we be attuned to that need in our community and try to serve them?
Yeah. And it is, you're completely right. And sometimes in a rural setting, one of the things I hear, especially from the people who've lived in our community a long time, and this may be a little more particular to New England rural, where people have families that, go back Civil War time or further back. It's a reality even in rural places. People used to say, they used to literally know everybody's name in town because it was relatively small. We were a very small town. It was all the same families, who had lived here a long time. And even in a place like we live, that's just not true. And I don't know if it was actually ever true, but this is people think they knew everybody in town, but it's definitely not true now. And so, and your point about, more and more people have less and less people is a stark reminder that one of the things the church has always been is the place where people find each other and find help in one another and helping God through that help they get from one another. And so we are better positioned even for that now and we should never assume, they've got family that can help them through this, or they've got good friends who can help them through that. They may, and that's great if they do. But they also may not have those things. And even if they have those things, they may need more of that. And that's exactly what we're positioned to do as the church, is to be that for them.
I'm glad you believe the same thing I do about small town ministry, particularly this myth that I had to learn. It was not true that everybody knows everybody. And in a town of 1,000, I've learned that there are so many strangers, and there's so many folks that are isolated and disconnected, and families are increasingly so. It's not everybody. There's some families with great connection, but many people don't know their neighbors, even in a small town. And that there again provides an opportunity for the church to provide a different way of living: rich fellowship, rich connection, sharing burdens, breaking bread together, right? Baking bread together, and really,
absolutely,
yeah. Now we're talking, doing life together. So we it just popped in my head. We do a shared church ministry between our 4 churches and our 2 communities to high school seniors, and part of that was making sure that churches, as these seniors are likely to move out of our small towns, whether they go to college, training, military, whatever it be, we want our last impact or potential last impact on them to be blessing them. So we do this life lessons ministry in their senior year, where we offer sessions on finances, relationships, mental health, and their future. And coming up this Sunday night is mental health, and we pay them to come. So if they finish the sessions, they get a $250 reward. There's some bonuses they can earn by coming too. But our main goal is connection. Again, we want to say these churches have been here for a very long time. we will continue to be here. Some of you will come back. Some of you will have family here. We want you to know we exist to love God and love people, and we're here to love you. And so that's why we're doing these lessons. We're going to share this, and it's an exciting ministry, and I'm looking forward to the one this week on mental health, and telling them that Christians actually care about things like self-care. That God's kind of the one that thought it up. And teaching them a bit about that. I'd like to talk to you in the future just about life lessons as an outreach tool that we use, but it's got a mental health aspect that really important. When I started here, yes, there were some mental health challenges with youth, but I think we are following along with the statistics of the nation that there's more and more anxiety and depression, and so being real about that, and not just again saying, "Oh, what can we do?" or bemoaning the societal changes or technological changes. Saying, "Okay, how do we get aware? How do we get into conversation? But then how do we bring our Christian beliefs to bear?" One thing is we also read good secular books. And sometimes buy them for the community, like The Anxious Generation. If you guys read that, about a lot of the changes with social media and platforms that does impact youth mental health, particularly. We bought, through a little grant that we connected to, bought boxes of those books and got them out to folks and did a book study and gave some to teachers and administrators. So not being afraid to engage the culture and the conversations of what is happening. And just because we're rural and small town doesn't mean we can't know what's going on.
Last I checked, all the kids who ride my daughter's school bus have cell phones going to high school. So when it comes to we may not be might be a big town, but everybody, some of those things come right for our towns. So
definitely.
Well, Corey, this has been a really good conversation and really vital to what is going on in our churches and our communities. We have one last question for you, and it's what gives you hope as you do this work in a rural setting?
Hope is what it's all about. That's honestly what I tell people at the end of my trainings for suicide prevention, particularly, but also mental health first aid, is hope is the antidote to so many of our challenges, but hope has to come in physical form of a person caring and being there. So what gives me hope is to see leaders and people stepping up to saying, I want this training for myself, but I also want to advocate to have it in my agency or for the whole county, and in one of our situations to offer it to every department in the county, and real leaders, real church members stepping up and saying, we should do this in our church. We should care about people's mental health because Jesus cares, right? He cares about the whole person, mind, body, soul. So it gives me hope to see that people are stepping up more and more. And I believe that's going to continue to happen. And so I'm hopeful that you wonderful people, the Blackies, that said, hey, let's step up to have a conversation about this. And I will be hopeful when I hear maybe somebody respond to this podcast, sending you a message or me a message saying, what do you think in our situation we could do to do something about it? That gives me hope when real people step up and saying, I want to help my neighbors in need. So,
Well, thank you, Corey. This has been so good. And I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. And I hope that this will just continue to help the conversation around mental health in our communities.
Great.
Thanks so much, Corey.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Rural Renewal Podcast is brought to you by Fresh Expressions and the Ascent Movement. Fresh Expressions is a worldwide movement of everyday missionaries who want to see churches thrive in places we eat, live, work, and play by leveraging the creativity and endurance of the inherited church. The mission of the Ascent Movement is to create a thriving, collaborative connection for the church to live out the Great Commission in today's context. One of the initiatives of the movement is the Mustard Seed Initiative. Inspired by the message in the parable of the mustard seed, The Mustard Seed Initiative seeks to empower small churches across North America, enabling them to grow in faith and impact within their communities.
To connect with this podcast, you can email us at podcasts@freshexpressions.com. Rural Renewal Podcast is hosted by Kathleen Blackie and Chris Blackie. It's edited by Joel Limbowen and produced by Kathleen Blackie and Jeanette Statz. Our senior director is Shannon Kaiser. A special thank you to Brad and Joni Perry of Alabaster Grace for the use of their music for our podcast.
If you have learned something or been encouraged by this podcast, please help us spread the word. You can give us a review on Apple Music or Spotify and share this episode on social media.
May God be merciful and bless us. May his face smile with favor on us. May your ways be known throughout the earth, your saving power among people everywhere. May the nations praise you, O God. Yes, may all the nations praise you. Let the whole world sing for joy because you govern the nations with justice and guide the people of the whole world. May the nations praise you, O God. Yes, may all the nations praise you. Then the earth will yield its harvest, and God, our God, will richly bless us. Yes, God will bless us, and people all over the world will fear him. Psalm 67.